Hi guys, tonight we're exploring something absolutely extraordinary. What if scientists discovered a deliberate message encoded in human DNA? Not from evolution, not from our ancestors, but from an intelligence beyond our world, written into the very code of life itself. If you enjoy these DNA mystery sleep stories that blend biology with cosmic questions, hit that like button and subscribe for more. And drop a comment letting me know what time it is where you are and where you're listening from. I love connecting with curious minds across the globe. Alright, let's begin. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was written not in stone tablets or ancient scrolls, but in the very fabric of life itself. Deep within the nuclei of every cell that has ever lived exists a 4-letter alphabet that has been spelling out the story of existence for over 3 billion years. Adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. These molecular messengers have faithfully recorded the epic of evolution. But what if they contained something more? What if buried within the endless sequences of genetic code lay a message not from our evolutionary past, but from an intelligence beyond our world? The discovery begins, as many scientific breakthroughs do, with an anomaly. Dr. Sarah Chen, a computational biologist at the European Bioinformatics Institute in Cambridge, first notices it while analysing what scientists call junk DNA. The vast stretches of genetic material that don't appear to code for proteins. For decades, researchers have assumed these sequences, which comprise roughly 98% of the human genome, are evolutionary debris, remnants of our biological past with no current function. But Chen's algorithms detect something extraordinary. Patterns within these supposedly random sequences that exhibit mathematical properties far too sophisticated to have emerged by chance. The anomaly appears first in the human genome, specifically within chromosome 14, in a region spanning approximately 2 million base pairs. When Chen applies Fourier analysis to translate the genetic sequence into mathematical frequencies, she discovers what appears to be a prime number sequence of unprecedented length and complexity. The probability of such a pattern emerging naturally, her calculations suggest, is less than 1 in 10 to the power of 250, a number so vanishingly small that it might as well be impossible. But the truly staggering revelation comes when Chen expands her analysis beyond human DNA. The same mathematical signature appears in the genome of Escherichia coli bacteria, in the chloroplasts of wheat plants, in the mitochondrial DNA of dolphins, and in the genetic material of organisms ranging from the deepest ocean trenches to the highest mountain peaks. The pattern exists not just in complex multicellular life, but in single-celled organisms that diverged from our evolutionary lineage over 2 billion years ago. This suggests that whatever created this signature was present at the very dawn of life on Earth. The mathematical structure Chen has uncovered follows what becomes known as the Universal Genetic Signature, or UGS. When decoded, it reveals a series of nested prime numbers that form a 3-dimensional mathematical object, resembling a hypersphere in 11-dimensional space. The complexity is breathtaking. The complete sequence contains over 47 million base pairs and would require the computational power of every supercomputer on Earth working for approximately 6 months to fully decode. As word of Chen's discovery spreads through the scientific community, research teams across the globe begin their own investigations. At the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology, marine biologists discover the same signature in the DNA of extremophile bacteria living around hydrothermal vents 4 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean. These organisms thrive in temperatures exceeding 400 degrees Celsius and pressures 800 times greater than atmospheric pressure at sea level, conditions that mirror the hellish environment of early Earth. The implications are staggering. If this signature appears in organisms that have been isolated in the deep ocean for hundreds of millions of years, it suggests that the message was embedded in the earliest forms of life, possibly even before the development of complex cellular structures. This timing coincides with what scientists call the Great Oxygenation Event, which occurred approximately 2.4 billion years ago, when cyanobacteria began producing oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, fundamentally altering Earth's atmosphere and paving the way for complex life. At the Stanford Research Institute, teams of cryptographers and linguists work around the clock to decode what appears to be the most sophisticated message ever discovered. The breakthrough comes when Dr. Marcus Webb, a specialist in ancient languages and mathematical codes, recognizes that the genetic sequence contains multiple layers of information encoded using different mathematical frameworks. The outer layer uses a simple substitution cipher based on the golden ratio, phi, which equals approximately 1.618. This ratio appears frequently in nature, from the spiral of nautilus shells to the arrangement of seeds in sunflowers, suggesting that whoever created this message understood fundamental principles of biological mathematics. Beneath this initial layer lies something far more complex, a multidimensional data structure that contains what appears to be a comprehensive map of our galaxy. The coordinates are given not in human astronomical units, but in precisely calculated wavelengths of the hydrogen 21 centimeter line, the most abundant element in the universe. This choice of measurement system suggests an intelligence that understood both the universality of physical constants and the likelihood that any spacefaring civilization would recognize this fundamental frequency. The galactic map reveals details about our solar system that were unknown to human science until the late 20th century. It accurately depicts the orbital mechanics of all 8 planets, including the precise inclination of Uranus at 98 degrees and the retrograde rotation of Venus. Most remarkably, it shows the location of over 2,000 asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, with positional accuracy that matches our best current measurements. The message even indicates the presence of water ice on the moon Europa and the subsurface oceans of Enceladus, discoveries that human scientists didn't make until the Galileo and Cassini space missions of the 1990s and 2000s. But the map extends far beyond our solar system. It charts the positions of over 400,000 stars within a radius of 1,000 light-years from Earth, including detailed information about their spectral classifications, luminosity, and the presence of planetary systems. Of particular interest is the identification of 47 star systems marked with what appears to be a special designation, a mathematical symbol that translates roughly to habitable worlds with complex life. These systems, scattered across the local galactic neighborhood, suggest that life may be far more common in the universe than previously imagined. The economic implications of Chen's discovery ripple through global markets within hours of the first papers being published. Stock prices for biotech companies surge as investors speculate about potential technological applications. Genentech sees its share price increase by 47% in a single trading day, while smaller biotech firms experience gains of over 200%. The total market capitalization of life sciences companies increases by approximately $800 billion within the first week of the announcement. Governments around the world scramble to assess the implications. The Pentagon establishes a classified research program with an initial budget of $12 billion to investigate potential military applications of the genetic message. Similar programs emerge in China, Russia, and the European Union, each with budgets ranging from $5 to $15 billion. The concern is not just about the message itself, but about what it might reveal about Earth's visibility to other intelligences in the galaxy. Religious communities worldwide grapple with the theological implications of the discovery. the Vatican convenes an extraordinary council of theologians, scientists, and philosophers to examine what this means for Christian doctrine. Cardinal Alessandro Toretti, the Church's leading scientific advisor, suggests that the discovery may represent a form of divine revelation encoded in the very structure of life. If God is the author of all creation, he states in a historic address, then perhaps this message represents his signature upon the book of life itself. Islamic scholars at Al-Azhar University in Cairo reach similar conclusions, interpreting the genetic message as consistent with Quranic verses describing Allah's signs embedded throughout creation. Rabbi Sarah Goldman of the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York suggests that the discovery vindicates ancient Kabbalistic teachings about hidden meanings encoded in the structure of existence itself. However, not all religious leaders embrace the discovery. Fundamentalist groups across multiple faiths denounce it as either a hoax or evidence of demonic deception. Protests erupt in several American cities as some Christian denominations declare the genetic message to be the work of Satan, designed to lead humanity away from true faith. Similar reactions occur in parts of the Islamic world, where conservative clerics warn that the discovery represents a test of faith that believers must reject. The scientific community faces its own crisis of confidence. Dr. James Morrison, a prominent evolutionary biologist at Harvard University, argues that the discovery fundamentally challenges our understanding of how life originated on Earth. Either we must accept that an advanced intelligence deliberately engineered the earliest forms of life, he writes in a controversial paper published in Nature, or we must radically revise our understanding of how complex information can emerge from natural processes. The debate intensifies when additional layers of the genetic message are decoded. Hidden within the galactic map is what appears to be a technical manual describing principles of physics and engineering that are centuries beyond current human knowledge. The manual includes detailed schematics for what researchers tentatively identify as faster-than-light communication devices, fusion reactors with efficiency rates approaching 99%, and material compositions that could theoretically produce substances stronger than any known element. Of particular interest is a section that appears to describe the manipulation of gravitational fields through the precise alignment of exotic matter particles. The mathematics involved requires an understanding of 11-dimensional string theory that human physicists are only beginning to explore. Dr. Lisa Nakamura, a theoretical physicist at CERN, estimates that implementing the described technology would require energy outputs equivalent to the total power consumption of the entire European Union for approximately 6 months, a staggering 1,500 terawatt-hours. The conspiracy theories begin almost immediately. On social media platforms and underground forums, amateur researchers claim that governments have known about the genetic message for decades. They point to unexplained increases in genetic research funding during the 1970s and 80s, suggesting that the discovery was made much earlier and has been suppressed. According to these theories, the public revelation is part of a carefully orchestrated disclosure program designed to gradually acclimate humanity to the reality of non-human intelligence. Some conspiracy theorists go further, suggesting that the genetic message is not from an extraterrestrial source at all, but evidence of a lost human civilization that achieved technological advancement far beyond our current level. They cite ancient texts describing advanced technologies and point to archaeological anomalies that seem inconsistent with mainstream historical timelines. The discovery of the message, they argue, proves that humanity has experienced cycles of rise and fall, with each cycle leaving only traces of its existence in the genetic code of surviving life forms. A darker theory emerges from certain fringe groups who interpret the genetic message as evidence of ongoing manipulation of human development by non-human entities. They suggest that the message is not historical, but represents active programming that continues to influence human evolution and behavior. According to this interpretation, various aspects of human culture, from religious beliefs to technological development, have been subtly guided by the intelligence that embedded the genetic message. The intelligence community takes these theories seriously enough to launch comprehensive investigations. The Central Intelligence Agency establishes a special task force to examine potential national security implications of the genetic message, with particular attention to whether foreign governments may have had prior knowledge of its existence. Similar investigations are conducted by intelligence services in Russia, China, and other major powers, each seeking to determine whether rivals gained an advantage from early access to the information. Meanwhile, the race to decode the remaining layers of the genetic message intensifies. Supercomputers at national laboratories around the world work continuously to unravel the mathematical structures. The Tianhe 2A supercomputer in China, capable of performing 54 quadrillion calculations per second, dedicates 60% of its processing power to genetic message analysis. Similar allocations are made at computing centers in the United States, Japan, and Europe, representing a collective computational effort worth approximately $2 billion annually. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source. Anna Volkov, a 17-year-old student from Moscow, discovers a pattern that has eluded professional cryptographers. Working with freely available genetic data and a home computer, she recognizes that the message contains recursive mathematical structures similar to fractals. Each decoded section contains smaller versions of the entire message, creating a nested hierarchy of information that could theoretically contain unlimited amounts of data. Volkov's discovery revolutionizes the decoding process. Instead of attempting to decode the message linearly, research teams begin exploring its fractal properties. They find that each level of recursion reveals different types of information. The outermost levels contain the galactic map and technical specifications previously discovered. Deeper levels reveal what appears to be biological data, including genetic templates for organisms that don't exist on Earth, but that follow familiar biochemical principles. The most profound discovery comes at the deepest level yet explored. Here, encoded in mathematical structures of almost incomprehensible complexity, lies what appears to be a message directed specifically at intelligence capable of genetic manipulation. The content is startling. It suggests that life on Earth was not only deliberately seeded, but that it represents one experiment in a vast network of worlds where similar processes have been initiated. According to this deepest layer of the message, Earth is designated as experiment number 7423 in a program spanning multiple galaxies and involving millions of worlds. The experiment began approximately 4 billion years ago when self-replicating molecular machines were introduced into Earth's primordial oceans. These machines were programmed to guide the evolution of life toward the eventual development of intelligence capable of decoding the embedded message. The revelation that Earth's entire evolutionary history may have been guided by non-human intelligence sends shockwaves through every field of human knowledge. Paleontologists re-examine the fossil record, looking for signs of artificial intervention in evolutionary processes. They find troubling inconsistencies in the timeline of complexity development. The explosion of complex life forms during the Cambrian period, approximately 540 million years ago, occurred over a time span that many researchers now consider suspiciously brief for natural evolutionary processes. Dr. Patricia Williams, a paleogeneticist at the Natural History Museum in London, discovers that the genetic diversity explosion during the Cambrian period coincides with specific mathematical markers embedded in the genetic message. The timing is too precise to be coincidental, she argues, suggesting that major evolutionary transitions were triggered by external intervention rather than random mutation and natural selection. The implications extend beyond evolutionary biology into neuroscience and psychology. The genetic message contains detailed information about the development of complex nervous systems, including specific gene sequences that regulate brain development in mammals. Dr. Robert Chen, a neuroscientist at MIT, discovers that these sequences contain subtle modifications that appear designed to enhance pattern recognition and mathematical reasoning abilities. Even more disturbing is the discovery that the genetic message includes predictive models for human technological development. The encoded information accurately describes the timeline of human scientific advancement, from the development of agriculture 10,000 years ago to the invention of computers and space travel in the 20th century. The predictions extend into the future, suggesting that humanity will achieve faster-than-light travel within the next 2 centuries and will begin seeding other worlds within 500 years. The psychological impact on humanity is profound. Opinion polls conducted 6 months after the discovery reveal that 43% of respondents report feeling fundamentally changed by the knowledge that human evolution may have been guided by non-human intelligence. Suicide rates increase by approximately 12% in developed nations, while applications to religious seminaries and philosophy programs surge by over 300%. Educational systems worldwide scramble to incorporate the discovery into curricula. The International Baccalaureate Organization revises its biology and philosophy programs to address the implications of guided evolution. Universities establish new interdisciplinary programs combining genetics, astrobiology, and philosophy. Harvard University launches a Department of Xenogenetic Studies with an initial endowment of $50 million, while Oxford University creates the Centre for Evolutionary Ethics to examine the moral implications of artificially guided development. The discovery also transforms humanity's approach to space exploration. The genetic message provides detailed information about the 47 star systems marked as containing complex life, including precise coordinates and characteristics of potentially habitable planets. NASA immediately begins planning missions to the nearest of these systems, Gliese 667c, located 23 light-years away. The European Space Agency and other space organizations announce similar programs, with combined budgets exceeding $100 billion over the next 2 decades. Private companies rush to develop technologies described in the genetic message. SpaceX announces plans to build fusion-powered spacecraft based on the encoded technical specifications, while Amazon Web Services begins developing quantum computing systems using principles extracted from the message's mathematical structures. The potential technological advancement represents an economic opportunity worth trillions of dollars, driving unprecedented investment in research and development. However, the message also contains warnings. Deep within its encoded layers lies information about civilizations that fail to properly interpret or respond to similar genetic messages. These civilizations, according to the data, either destroyed themselves through misuse of the provided technology or stagnated after becoming dependent on external guidance rather than developing independent innovation capabilities. The warnings describe a pattern repeated across thousands of worlds, civilizations that focus solely on decoding the message without developing their own creative and ethical frameworks, inevitably collapse within centuries of the discovery. The most successful civilizations, according to the encoded data, use the message as a starting point for independent exploration rather than a definitive guide to development. This revelation sparks intense debate about humanity's appropriate response to the discovery. Some argue for immediate implementation of the described technologies, believing that rapid advancement is necessary for humanity's survival and expansion into space. Others advocate for a more cautious approach, emphasizing the development of ethical frameworks and social institutions capable of managing such powerful technologies responsibly. The United Nations establishes the Committee on Genetic Message Response, bringing together representatives from every nation to coordinate humanity's collective response. The committee's first major decision is to establish international protocols governing access to the most advanced technological information contained in the message. These protocols require unanimous consent from all Permanent Security Council members before any nation can begin implementing technologies that could fundamentally alter the balance of power on Earth. Religious leaders from around the world form the Interfaith Council on Creation Ethics, seeking to develop moral frameworks for understanding humanity's relationship with the intelligence that seeded Earth with life. The Council's initial statement acknowledges that the discovery challenges traditional creation narratives, while affirming that questions of ultimate meaning and purpose remain relevant regardless of humanity's biological origins. Scientific organizations work to establish research priorities for exploring the message's implications. The International Union of Biological Sciences creates a new classification system for genetic information that distinguishes between naturally evolved sequences and those that appear to have been artificially designed. This classification reveals that approximately 3% of all genetic material in complex organisms shows signs of artificial optimization, suggesting that the guiding intelligence made thousands of subtle interventions in evolutionary development. As research continues, the genetic message yields increasingly sophisticated information. Advanced mathematical structures reveal principles of consciousness and cognition that could revolutionize neuroscience and artificial intelligence. The message suggests that consciousness emerges from specific quantum mechanical processes in neural networks, providing detailed instructions for creating artificial systems that could achieve genuine self-awareness. The military implications are not lost on world governments. The genetic message contains information about weapons technologies that could render conventional military forces obsolete. These technologies, based on manipulation of fundamental forces, could theoretically disable electronic systems across entire continents or create defensive barriers impermeable to any known weapon. The discovery triggers a new arms race, as nations compete to decode and implement these technologies while simultaneously working to prevent potential adversaries from gaining advantages. International tensions escalate when intelligence agencies discover that several nations have been secretly working to decode advanced portions of the genetic message. Satellite imagery reveals the construction of massive computing facilities in remote locations, suggesting that some governments are investing billions of dollars in efforts to gain exclusive access to the message's most valuable information. The crisis deepens when a group of international scientists calling themselves the Open Genome Collective announces plans to publish the complete decoded genetic message online, making it freely available to any individual or organization. Government efforts to suppress this publication create a constitutional crisis in several democracies, pitting principles of scientific freedom against national security concerns. The debate over information control reflects deeper questions about humanity's readiness to handle technologies that could fundamentally transform civilization. Psychologists and sociologists warn that rapid technological advancement without corresponding social and ethical development could lead to widespread social disruption. Historical examples of societies that adopted advanced technologies without adequate cultural preparation suggest that the consequences could be catastrophic. Meanwhile, the search for additional genetic messages expands beyond Earth. Space agencies begin planning missions to Mars and Europa, specifically to search for similar genetic signatures in any extraterrestrial life forms that might be discovered. If the same intelligence that seeded Earth also influenced the development of life elsewhere in our solar system, the implications for understanding our cosmic neighbourhood would be revolutionary. The genetic message also provides clues about the nature and motivations of the intelligence that created it. Analysis of the mathematical structure suggests a form of consciousness that operates on timescales measured in millions of years, planning and implementing projects that span geological epochs. The intelligence appears to be fundamentally different from human consciousness, viewing individual organisms and even entire species as temporary components in vast biological experiments. This revelation challenges fundamental assumptions about intelligence and consciousness. If the message's creators operate on such extended timescales, their perspective on individual human lives and human civilization as a whole may be radically different from our own. Some philosophers argue that attempting to understand their motivations using human psychological frameworks may be inherently futile. The discovery forces humanity to confront its place in a universe that may be far more populated and purposeful than previously imagined. Earth emerges not as a unique miracle of life, but as one experimental site among thousands in a cosmic program of unprecedented scope and ambition. The realization that human consciousness itself may be an intended outcome of this experiment raises profound questions about free will, purpose, and the nature of existence itself. As the first anniversary of the discovery approaches, humanity finds itself at a crossroads. The genetic message offers access to technologies that could solve every material problem facing human civilization, from energy production to disease treatment to space exploration. Yet it also reveals that humanity is part of a vast experiment whose ultimate goals remain mysterious, and whose creators may view human civilization as expendable if it fails to meet certain criteria. The choice facing humanity is stark: embrace the message's revelations and risk losing the independence that may be essential for long-term survival, or reject external guidance and forfeit access to knowledge that could prevent future catastrophes. The decision made in the coming years will determine not only humanity's immediate future, but its ultimate fate in a universe where intelligence and purpose operate on scales beyond human comprehension. The genetic message hidden in DNA represents more than a scientific discovery. It is a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest questions about identity, purpose, and destiny. As we stand on the threshold of potentially revolutionary change, we must grapple with the possibility that everything we thought we knew about life, evolution, and our place in the cosmos may need to be fundamentally reconsidered. The message embedded in our cells speaks not only of where we came from, but of what we might become if we can find the wisdom to interpret its meaning correctly.